Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Anne, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jaye Anne, and Julie is here. Say hi, Julie.
Hello.
Today, this is sort of a part 2 of our herbalism conversation, and it's about more than just healing with herbs, but how do you make your whole life just richer and slower and more present? And how do we live sustainably without totally being, well, I don't mind being a super weirdo, but some people might not want to be a total super weirdo. So why should we do any of this? That's what we're going to get into today. It's going to be so fun. So, Julie, what's going on in your life, though?
Yeah, part of the reason we started talking about this topic, which often happens, especially if it's just me and Jaye Anne, when we're talking, we're like, what should we talk about when we just talk about our lives? And all of a sudden, this new topic, even though we have a sheet with so many topics on it, we'll be like, this is the topic. We need to talk about it right now. In my life, as many people have known, in the past year, I have moved from living in a tent to living in a 19-foot trailer to now we're going to live in a tiny house. So I have gone from like the very bottom rung, I guess, of like living in a living situation and what is that like and living almost totally outside to now coming back into more of modern convenience, but that is a little bit more sustainable. And I want to start by saying I never thought I would live in a tiny house ever in my whole life. People would be like, oh, sustainability. And, we don't need that much room. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? I want to build a mansion. I love my house. Like, I can't imagine having less room. I have too many kids for that. But through this journey, I had just noticed now, doing this crazy thing and traveling with my kids, I've noticed, wow, you only need the space that you think that you need, if that makes sense. And so going back and starting from the beginning has showed me so many places in my life where I have been living in a more unsustainable way. We talked about this a little bit in our Making Sacred Spaces episode, but about how we're really good at like putting fake stuff in our houses and our lives and bringing in all of these things. I have realized through this process and through my burnout, and I want to go slower. I want to not just live sustainably because it's good for the environment, but also because it's good for me. Like, it's good for me, it's good for my family, it's good for slowing down and for being more present and more feminine and being able to like live in this way that allows me to be mindful. And so we've talked a little bit about that before, and in this episode I think we kind of want to delve deeper into that. So is that good, Jan? What are your thoughts about sustainability?
I love this. It reminds me of not necessarily the same journey you went through, but I went through something similar when I was going through all of this questions of like, how do I eat for my body and have sustainable lifestyle? And like, this seems like it's in conflict because I can tell my body needs meat and all of the experts are saying meat kills the environment and I'm the very worst. And so like my existence is unsustainable and unacceptable. Like that was like the core issue. And then I found out more about how grass-fed cows stimulate the grass to grow more grass, and that actually does more carbon sequestration than a lot of other things, than like 100 trees, because grass, even though it may not get very tall, it just like constantly growing, so it's constantly pulling carbon out of the air. Hey, look at that. It's not about cow farts. It's really about stimulating grass to grow. And it was some of that that really helped me work through this. Hey, it's kind of normal for, if I'm living in alignment with my truest self, it's actually good for my environment too. that was a long time of like, oh wow, oh my gosh. And I had to like sit with that for like years because, and I think we're coming across this a lot more and more now. But I think a lot of people want to go, well, I want to be in that sustainable vein. I want things to be good. I want my children to have a world to live in the future. I don't want to have to like leave Earth. It makes no sense to that we should be on this earth, come from this earth, and then not have enough earth left for all of us. That doesn't make sense to me. And we're going to get into a lot of interesting things, why this all has transpired, but also what you can do to slow down and be more intentional without quitting your job and being dirty and poor, being crazy or something like that. So feeling like it's so far out of this realm of where you are right now. So, anyways, you don't have to go the extreme route to have a good life that is in alignment with both you and your environment. And I'm also going to point you to another thing that has to do with why humans, individual humans, feel personally responsible, like regular people feel personally responsible to fix the environment when it actually has nothing to do with personal humans, has everything to do with corporations. But that's another whole nother bag of tricks. But yeah, that's why I get excited about this kind of thing, not because I'm like, hey guys, I want to tell everybody what to do. Hey guys, you're all being bad and stupid and wrong and you need to feel bad about it. No, no, no. No. How do we make things better for ourselves and our kids and easier on ourselves at the same time? Let's do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing and a huge misconception is everything about sustainability has to be difficult, it has to cost tons of money, or you have to spend your whole life, you have to be a trad wife to have everything be sustainable all the time. And like this is nothing against if you are or aren't a trad wife or what you choose to do with your time. This is about how can we bring a little bit more. And I loved what you said, Jaye Anne. How can we bring more of that sustainability in? And just knowing that when we are living authentically, like you said, it does help everybody. It does help yourself. It does help the environment. It does bring people together and it can bring you more peace, more slow living, help you be in the now. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes I think this gets really politicized and it doesn't have to be a political thing. It doesn't have to be about that at all. And I think this can be one of the places where both sides agree. And I've seen that from different angles. We can come together and everybody loves the earth and everyone wants an easier life. And I think most people would like to integrate more mindfulness into their lives. So I'm excited to get started. We were just like chatting about a video I watched, and this came up, and we're like, yes, this is the time. And with thinking about the move into the tiny house and what it's been like and reflecting on our journey, we're like, okay, everyone needs to know this. So let's get started.
I love it. Okay, so we kind of talked about what does sustainable mean to you. Let's go ahead and just deeply define it. What is sustainability? What is slow living? What is all that? What is that? Why? And why?
Yeah. So to me, slow living is this concept of like, you don't have to be rushed all the time. You don't have to do. You can live in the now. You can spend your time doing things that are focused on what you actually want to focus on, that are more focused on mindfulness. And that is like having soft mornings, like gentle mornings, like getting up when you want to get up. It doesn't have to be at the peak of dawn if you don't want it to be, but most of us live in this life where we have to rush, we have to get our, everyone to school, we have to get ourselves to work, we have to get going. And because we have to do, we become really reliant on things like a really fast meal. Now we have to buy these convenient meals and we have to do these, frozen meals, or we have to depend on fast food, or we have to do all those things. Slow living is also intentional living to me. So, circumventing some of that, you can still have a busy life and practice slow living, which to me is just mindful living. So, putting intention into what you're doing, trying to live a life where you reuse things and use things with a purpose. So, that's where the sustainability comes in for me. Sustainability is making your life something that you can continue to do without having to either break down and burnout or continually buy tons and tons of products or continually, be in a basically a consumer mindset for your whole life and constantly consume, 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 but that you live your life in such a way that like our great grandparents did, where things have double purposes and you can make things last long and you use things that are durable and you can, create a life that it's not always at zero. You're not always, things are not always falling apart. Hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. Things that are durable and investing in quality over get it done now is a big piece of that. Sometimes that comes with a high cost, and recognizing like what are things that are being subsidized and why, because the things that are cheaper or less quality sometimes require more inputs than the higher quality stuff, but it's being subsidized, so it's actually a lower price. So for me, a big piece of it is asking like, why is something this price and what's gone into it and how much work has gone into it? Where is that coming from? And is this piece sustainable? Is this thing sustainable? Like if everyone were to get one, and that's what sales is for, is infinity, give it, create, get everybody all of these things. If that were to be the case, like what would be the after effects of that? This person didn't need this thing and then they threw it in the trash. Okay, well, what's the net effect of that, right? And asking these bigger questions on a smaller scale too. So going, okay, where does it come from? How do I use it? Do I need this? Or is this something that someone else needs? And it's like, I'm just trying to fit in. Um, and using and reusing stuff as much as you can. Things that have multiple purposes are tricky because it comes to this place you have to like retrain your mind to use it in different ways and have it like if you have a larger space, you might need more than one of those things so that it doesn't get lost. Where is this thing? Like scissors, right? I have 3 pairs of scissors, one for each level, because always there's going to be, and I'm like, when somebody puts the scissors in the wrong level, I'm like, oh my gosh. But you can use scissors for lots of things, right? You got to cut all kinds of stuff. But having these multiple use things are really important. And then also reworking your own mind to go, okay, this is the tool that I reach for when I do this. There weren't as many gadgets as we have today, right? And that's good and bad. It's good because we can do more specialized things, but it's not always the best because it's like if this thing breaks, I don't know how to take the action that I need to take. So having a depth of skills is also important. I think that it's just generally good for everyone if we all have a slight depth of skills, like gardening or building stuff. Even though that's not my primary function in this life, having those skills, having secondary skills are really important because if that thing fails, we have backup plans.
I think very simply, right? There's this, just like we sing that song, like the 3 R's, but like repurposing, recycling, reusing.
Yeah.
Renew, reuse, recycle is all part of sustainability. And I was also going to say, also speaking of money, like it's also about having a sustainable budget too. Like it allows you some of these things, like you said, like sometimes the quality is more expensive up front, but the way that it lasts or how you can use it will actually make your life easier and cheaper in the long run, and allows you to continue living a lifestyle that is happy and good for you, like an authentic lifestyle without pushing always beyond your means. Because a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about, people came up with a lot of these ideas during the Depression when people had no money. There were a lot of more sustainable tricks and things that people did to stretch what they had. So I think a lot of people feel like sustainability is out of their reach because we think that it costs $1,000 because companies are selling us sustainability back to us for so
Yep.
much money for things
Yep.
that we can make ourselves. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like it's also helping your budget.
I like that. Sustainability shouldn't be expensive, like fully expensive, because sustainability in its core nature is meant so that you can live a life that makes sense for you. That's as best as we can put it, I think. It shouldn't be expensive. That's ridiculous. You're talking about like companies selling it back to you, right? And there's always like a cost, like a virtue signaling cost that comes with the company sending it back to you, selling this sustainability back to you. Priuses, for example, they're so ugly, right? They were intentionally made ugly so that people could be like, I'm saving the planet and I had to give up aesthetics for it. They could have made that a pretty car, but it wasn't standing on a mountaintop going, I'm sustainable, and that's a good thing. That's why it was ugly. Not because it just had to be. No, the Prius was ugly because it would sell to people who wanted to tell people, I'm giving this up. There's no need for sackcloth and ashes when we're talking about sustainability. I have a healthy love for putting my hands in the dirt, but that's not the same thing, right? It's not the same thing. But using things and being able to reuse things, including like water, right? There's this terror of water shortages across the country because of data centers and all of that, which is another totally different argument that a good friend of mine wrote a fantastic article on that I will probably link in the show notes if you're curious about that kind of thing. But it talks about data centers and sustainability and water and electricity use and how things have been intentionally misquoted to make us feel bad for being human consumers rather than corporate consumers. They're not they're like pointing at the humans like, oh, you're doing too much generative AI and it's all your fault that Georgia's water prices are so high. Nope, that's not how that works. Anyways, that's my tangent. You want to reuse water, that's an option. You can reuse some parts of water. Julie, I'm sure you, as someone who's lived in an RV, you're like, I need to make sure all my water counts because it's annoying or expensive or both for you to get water, right?
Yes, not just water, but also the food because we don't have a big refrigerator. We have a very small refrigerator. And so everything that we buy, we have to eat and we have to eat up. And I realized how much we were not wasting, how we were wasting so much food when we lived in a regular house and we had a regular refrigerator because we all know this. The food gets lost in the back. You've saved something and you forget that it's there and it wilts and it dies and it molds. And then you clean out the fridge and you're like, this is where this has gone. Oh my gosh. Or you have to throw away these bananas because you forgot about them, whatever it is. And in this lifestyle, you couldn't forget about anything because you only have like 1 cubic foot of space where you have food. There's only so much. And so everything continues to get used. And water is that way too. There's only so much hot water. I mean, you can turn on your hot water heater and like it heats up, but it only heats up so much, in that amount of time. How long are you willing to wait? And how much water can you use? We really had to conserve it when we don't have water because lots of people don't know this, but when you live in an RV, you have to have special hookups. Your house always has water and electricity and all the things that you need. But in an RV, we might go to a campsite where they don't have any potable water. So we have no water. So we have to conserve all the water in our tank. And actually, Moth, my husband, is like, he is totally on that all the time. He's always the one who's like, don't wash your dishes. Like, don't use all that water for washing the dishes. Put it in the pot and then we'll use that water later to wash the dishes. And like, he's just always like, don't waste water. So we've noticed how much water that we're using and wasting over time. And that was a big reality check for me because I didn't have to think about it before. I didn't realize. And, the average American household uses over 80 gallons of water a day. That's normal for people. And if you have bigger families who shower, if you shower every day, you are using even more water than that. And I did just want to make one tiny comment about the data center thing because I have been wanting to talk about this forever and how the water being used up by the data centers is such a Neptune and Aries thing. Like, what a Neptune and Aries thing to happen, like all this water evaporating. Okay, I just wanted to save that and pocket it for later because when we talk about astrology again, I'm going to bring it out of my pocket.
Look, we can do it now. I'm not gonna lie, we can do it now.
But it is, right? Like, isn't that such a Neptune? Neptune being water, Neptune and Aries, data centers gobbling up water left and right. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that for now.
So funny.
And
So
Saturn,
funny.
Neptune conjunct Saturn, restriction, government restriction, or big corporations taking and restricting people's water with the data centers. Anyway, it's also going to be a big problem in Florida where I am now, too. So,
Well, and
sustainability.
where I live in Virginia is like ground zero for data centers. Where I grew up is like the data center capital of the world. Virginia has the most data centers of any state, even California. So it's like hot topic right now. And in my particular county, they're like considering getting some. And so everybody is like, I went to a, this was really funny. I went to a local, just the county government was having like a little get together to kind of go, this is the deal, this is what we know. They invited the water and electric companies, and everyone was super angry. Super, super angry. I had never seen a mob of people before, but I saw a mob of people that night. And they are very highly concerned, and rightly so, about sustainability. They're like, well, the biggest piece that no one could answer was the frequency that would confuse birds and bees. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. Like, that's a big conversation there.
Yeah, well, because people don't believe that birds and bees work on frequencies for some reason, but they do. The bees,
Especially bees, their wings are like a frequency generator.
yes, that's how they tell which flowers to use and how to get the pollen to stick to them is the frequency. Anyway, this is a whole other topic as
It's
well.
a whole other topic, but I will say it's another topic that people think about, especially right now with sustainability, is data centers and AI and all of that. So yeah, I'm gonna probably put that link somewhere because it was such a good read, and it's just like, oh, it's actually all a distraction to tell you like you're doing everything wrong as a normal consumer, and because you are a small consumer you have like barely any control over it. That way everyone can feel guilty and trapped, so that way every the corporations can keep living their lives without making any changes whatsoever.
And that is a huge theme for sustainability and why all of our sustainable practices have gone away is corporations, corporate structure. So, should we get into that part, Jayan?
That's exactly where I was going. Do it.
All right. So, we think back to our great grandmothers and what they were doing and how many practices that they had that were really sustainable, sewing and putting things together and how they cooked. And then all of a sudden we have, better living through chemistry comes through. We have in the 1940s and 50s that where we're having all of these companies pop up because we're getting new technology, especially after World War II. And these new technologies want to sell their products. And because they want to sell their products, we have to stop doing the sustainable things, the things that we were doing, the practices that don't give them any money so that we will buy their product. One small example of this, well, we can give many more, but one small example of this is that everybody used to have an ice box in their house, and they often people had root cellars. So you would get a cube of ice and you would pack your ice box with newspaper on the sides, and that would be enough. You could keep that ice alive with that newspaper insulation for almost a week, and the ice cost like 10 cents or something. It was much cheaper to put that in, and that's how you keep things cold. Or you'd have your root cellar, which is dug into the ground, and it keeps that temperature really nice all year round. And that's where you keep and store your cold stuff. But once the refrigerator came around, people stopped learning how to dig out root cellars. They stopped doing that, and they told people don't use ice. Ice melts. Ice is, using this ice box is going to make your food go bad quicker. You need a refrigerator. Everybody buy the refrigerator. And now we all have refrigerators, which are very convenient, but if the power goes out, what happens to your food? Your food goes away. A lot of people, I've lost tons of food from my refrigerator, going out at one time or another. I think most people have. And so then we have to buy new ones and more and more. And that's just one tiny example. But do you want to keep going, Jayan, with some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so things like there are a lot of the gardens in general. People just stop gardening. They just stopped because you can get fresh produce from the grocery store. And what we don't realize is that the grocery store is only 3 days away from being empty at any given moment. All of them. As much it baffles me every time I walk into a grocery store and you can see like piles of fresh produce. And there's what, 5, 6 grocery stores in my town. multiplied by however many towns. It's just like shocking to me that we have this much fresh fruit all the time, day, every day. That's the most perfect kind of food, right? Now you see all these different produce boxes called like imperfect food, or like less than great food, because the threshold for being in the grocery store is so high that even if there's like one dent in the orange, people just won't buy it and then they won't use it and it will go bad. So they don't even allow it in the grocery stores. That's why there's all these like seconds, is what they call it, produce markets. So the quantity of food that's perfect that goes in, there's probably twice as much that's not good enough to get in the grocery store. We have so much food in this country, like so much. It baffles me. We don't know where all that other food is, like the seconds. The seconds tend to be canned and stuff like that. If all that production were to slow or go away all of a sudden, for whatever reason, what do? Right? And I think a lot of people kind of got the idea when egg prices shot up to like $12 a dozen. P.S. guys, my egg price, I think I said this already like 5 times on this podcast, but my egg prices stayed the same. You know why? Because I know my farmers and they didn't have that problem because they have small, this happened, the issues that can create problems happen to large scale chicken farmers. That's how it works because they're the ones feeding the grocery stores. So when egg prices shot up, a lot of people are like, I really want to get some chickens. And then they were like, oh, but I have to buy a coop, I have to buy chickens, buy feed, and go out and do the things. And yeah, you do have to do those things. So it's not necessarily about the price, especially not in the short term. This one egg, after doing all this one egg now costs me $3,000. No, that's not how it works. But over time, it's more sustainable. If every third household had chickens, we would not need an egg industry. Oh, guess what? The corporations don't want you to know that. And we're not we're not some like crazy hippies, man, sitting in the corner on our secret podcast in the 70s going, the big corporations, man, they're trying to get you. It's just a fact of life where a corporation can insert itself in between you and that thing, they can make money. And if they can give you a reason why you don't want to keep doing that thing, you're going to feel dependent on them. You're going to continue to give them money. That's just capitalism. It's not a
Yeah,
conspiracy.
it's literally just, just follow the money. That's the way that it goes. And another really good one I was thinking about is we used to can stuff, right? You were talking about canning, and we used to can stuff. And there was a huge campaign after World War II, because before the FDA actually used to, or not the FDA, well, before it was the FDA was founded in 1942, I believe. But there used to be the American Chemistry Council before that and a bunch of little things. But anyway, the government used to encourage people to can their own food, and they used to encourage people to do a lot of these practices that we're going to talk to you about. They used to tell people, keep a small garden. Everyone should have a victory garden, right? During World War II, everybody had a victory garden. They told everyone, use cardboard and insert it into your shoes to make your shoes last longer. And then afterwards, when we started to have this boom of industry, then they stopped. They quietly stopped telling people that. And we started running campaigns on things like botulism. So for people who used to can their food, the fear now, what people will tell you and what the FDA will say was like, oh my gosh, be so careful, because if you get botulism, if you can your own food, it's all going to go bad. You're going to get botulism. Everyone's going to be sick and you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And that came after canning companies started to can everything and sell it, instead of us having, dry beans. People used to have dry beans and soak their beans overnight and use that water and use their beans for lots of different things, to make meals stretch and to do a lot of stuff. But now that everything's canned and we have so many companies who want to do that, we can't endorse, everybody canning their own stuff, because that would take away from these canning companies. Another big thing that used to happen was that flour companies, I mean like flour that you make bread with, they used to put on their sacks of flour that it was made out of actual material. And they started printing really cute prints on the material of of the flour. And the mothers, after they used a sack of flour, would make dresses and clothes for their kids out of that sack of flour.
That's so fun.
Isn't that so cool? Yes, it was like such a cool thing that they used to do. And, kids would never know. Like flower dresses were really a thing. And these flower companies would try to have the best patterns on their flower sacks so that women would buy them because women would choose them and they would make them rags and do that. But now we don't. We don't sell flour in those bags because it's cheaper to sell in paper. But we also have this industry, the clothing industry, that has created disposable clothing. Before, you would never dispose of your clothes after one wear. You would reuse them, right? You would make them into rags. You would patch them up. You would darn your socks. But after having the industry fast fashion come in, all of that is discouraged. And how many people do you know that actually sew now? Very,
Oh,
very
yeah.
few people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Convenience wins
Yeah.
out. That's kind of the thing. And companies come in and grab at that convenience, and that's part of the reason we don't have a more sustainable life.
Yeah, and then in order to afford to pay for all these things that we've now become dependent on paying for because we don't know, we don't do other things that prevent us from paying for that. We have to go, everybody has to have a job. Everybody has to go and work for these corporations. And there we are. Like now we're all about, yeah, okay, we want these companies to grow because I want my paycheck to get bigger so I can buy. It's inherently unsustainable, and it's causes a lot of burnout in people in general. But that's why also we're talking about this, because environmental stability and personal stability and burnout are all connected.
100%. And I could definitely go into now, right now that everybody has to work, right? Every kid has to go to school. Also, not that all schools are bad. That's not what I'm saying, jumping on this train, but it does make it so that we are more apt to never have one parent home. Both parents have got to work, and that causes more burnout because there's no like way to stay. There's no being able to have someone who's there to take care of things at home. And that's why we need more convenience to cover that. And someone's always got to be doing. We're working. And then you get two working parents who come back and they're exhausted and they don't have time for their kids. And the kids are exhausted. And then the kids are on screens. And then just the loop of burnout continues over and over again.
Yep. It's completely an extraction process, and it's multi-generational. And that is the hook, unfortunately. But yeah, that sounds dismal. Whoops. Sorry, guys. We'll make it a little easier in a second. But we need to understand, like, how did we get here? And I think a lot of people, if you don't ask the question, how did we get here? You really can't answer what should we do. You can't, because, and part of the problem that we're going to say is some of it's way outside your control, because the people who are the worst offenders aren't people, they're large companies. But what we can do is, how do I take my power back? What does it look like to take my power back? Even how do I even get there? What do I even want? And that's why these questions are part of sustainability too, is like, what is it do I actually want, and what would make me feel good in my body, and how do I support my kids and the next generations to recognize that their truest self is also their most sustainable self, and they can keep their power. Because the more we give our power away, whether by choice or by default, the less we are ourselves, right?
Totally. And this is not a condemnation on the way anybody lives any kind of lifestyle. It's not saying like you going out and wanting to have a really high-paced job is wrong. Like that's not what we're trying to say at all. Or you wanting to stay home all the time is wrong. None of that is wrong. And I would say there's seasons for everything. Everyone can be in different seasons. We're always rotating. What we're trying to do is just give you some ideas for wherever you're at, whatever kind of lifestyle you have, whatever your goals are, like Jaye Anne said, that you can live authentically and add a little bit more sustainability, take back some power into your own hands so that you feel more like yourself and less burned out.
Absolutely. I am not going to lie, I do like buying things. So I'm not sitting here going, I do live in flower bags. I found some old flower bags at a vintage shop and I made myself a dress. I'm not doing that. I am incorporating these things in ways that make sense for me and my body and the things that I value. And I am letting myself enjoy my life because that's all we can do at the end of the day. So, what are some practical things that we can do that would be some great examples to bring back sustainability in our lives?
Okay, let's start with some simple ones. Jaye Anne and I were talking about these earlier, and she is way more savvy at this stuff than I am, I have to say. A couple easy things you can do is just to save your bacon grease. That's number one. Save the grease that you use. And you probably have a grandmother who does this, or maybe you save the grease in your house because you don't want to throw it down the drain because it hurts the drain pipes. That's great also, but you can actually reuse that grease very easily. If you just get a cheesecloth and put it over that jar and you pour the grease into the jar, you can rebake so many things. You can save so much money on butter just by reusing the grease from things like your bacon, any kind of grease, the leftover butter or whatever that's in your pan. You can use that in a myriad of ways, not just for cooking, but cooking is probably the easiest. So that's one. Another one we were talking about is using and saving your potato water. If you boil pasta or potatoes, you can also save that water.
I used to save pasta and potato water and I put it in the refrigerator until the next time I was making pasta or potato water. And so I would actually have two separate little jars. And this is even wilder. Okay, the reason why any of this happened is because I grew up really poor. And when I became an adult, I was like, I'm going to do the most like sustainable things just out of like this sense of complete lack. Complete lack. P.S. The place I lived, my water bill was built into my condo fee, so I wasn't going to change anything about my life by saving water. But what I was actually really concerned with was nutrient quantity, because when you boil water for potatoes, when you boil pasta, some of the nutrients come out into the water and then you just dump it all down the drain. So I was really worried about preserving nutrients. And so I had two jars, one for pasta water, one for potato water. And I didn't even, I could not even bring myself to purchase like ball jars. I used old spaghetti sauce jars, saved all of this water in. And then when it was potatoes, I would like put it back in the same. And then I didn't think about this, but Julie told me earlier that you're saying you can use it to make bread. And that makes the most sense in the world because potato bread is the fluffiest, tastiest bread. And if you can just like a little bit of that into the bread, like some potato water, genius. I love this idea. I love this plan.
The yeast eats it, right?
Mm.
Or if you want to do sourdough, that sourdough starter will eat it faster. And so the bread will rise faster, but like you said, it makes it thicker, makes it fluffier. It's adding the extra nutrients from the potato skins and things like that. So it's a really easy way to get more nutrients and to get more delicious bread also.
I love this. Yeah, and you can save like vegetable water from cooking too. I had read somewhere that they were trying to figure out why specific groups of poor people had better nutrition, even though they were the same amount of poor. And this was like in the 20s or 30s or something. And the people who had better nutrition, and this was in the South, were using the water from the collards. They were dipping their biscuits in it. And if you are super poor and you only can eat biscuits, you're only eating flour and water. And then if you're having collard greens that are cooked a long time, which is how you're going to cook collard greens, that water that's left in the pot, when you dip the bread in there, you're actually getting more nutrition. You're getting that vitamin C, because it's not just that it cooks and like breaks down the vitamin C when you cook foods, it's that it also goes into the water because it's water soluble. So if you actually drink the water for leftover, then you get more nutrition. And I do this by saving the odds and ends of the vegetables, and then I freeze them. So I always have like a freezer bag of, and my kids think I'm crazy, but they do it with me because they don't have a choice. But I just have like odds and ends of vegetables, like the ends of onions, the ends of carrots, the peels of the carrot, like all of that stuff that you normally would just throw away. I put it in a freezer bag, and when the freezer bag is full, it's gallon size bag. I stick it in the crock pot and I make broth, and then I can take the broth and use that for making rice or making potatoes. And here we are, full circle, right?
Yeah, well, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, you can use all that water, whether it's collard greens or it's spinach or it's kale or whatever it is that you're boiling, you can just make a soup out of that later,
Mm-hmm.
and use that broth later. People now know about bone broth, which is another great, easy, sustainable practice. Anytime you have bones, I think a lot of us feel like, well, it has to be soup bones. Like I have to go buy soup bones to make bone broth, which is not true at all. You can use the water that you had from the vegetables and you just collect any bones that you have, whatever meat you have. If you eat a chicken, like a rotisserie chicken, just throw it in there and you will get nutrition. I know people are going to be like, rotisserie chicken isn't good for you and those chickens aren't raised well, blah, 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 blah. But there's still going to be nutrients and collagen to be
Yep.
extracted from
They
those
still have
bones.
to have calcium in their bones. They still have to have all that, whatever. I take the bones from rotisserie chicken. I take the bones from wings. I put it all in its own freezer chicken bag. And then when that's full, I make a chicken broth. I have beef, I have pork, I have chicken, and sometimes I have a lamb bag. I keep it all. I have one for. I kind of have a whole freezer just bones. I'm a little weird. Okay.
But that's the thing is it's not weird, and you can also use those bones, like those can be ground up and you can put them in your yard to help your garden grow. So there's other things you can do. Another thing, I'm not even a coffee drinker, but this is kind of a cool thing you can do, is you could also give your coffee grounds to your garden if you have that, if you're used coffee grounds. And those coffee grounds, that's what they used to use instead of salt to like get snow out of the way. They would use coffee grounds to do
Oh, I
that.
didn't know that one.
Yeah, and the coffee grounds are great because they soak into the earth and they have some nutrients in them, and they they help with growing things. I guess there's probably coffee grounds that aren't as good if the coffee is bad or like has lots of pesticide in it or whatever, but it is a practice that you can do to help your garden and to not waste your grounds.
I actually get super excited. This is so just so silly when I have like odds and ends of different vegetables and coffee grounds, and I just put them in the compost. And that's actually a big piece of my energetic spiritual practice is the compost. Sometimes I will do like different. I know this. Julie's gonna cry. It's adorable. I love this. So I know I've done like different like spells and like experiences where I just pour all of the gunk from my own energetic self into my compost, because that's what we're doing when we're doing energy work is we're giving it back to the earth, and the earth composts everything. And some of the hardest times in my life is just like silly, you just stood there at my compost.
I like that touches my heart so deeply. I love that that's what you do. I think we should all do that, have our compost pile and giving back to the earth, and what a perfect energetic sustainability piece for everyone to give back to the earth. Wow, that's great. And that's a great thing that people can do is you can have a compost pile. That's something that you would like to have. I've seen lots of people just keep a little container by their sink, throw the eggshells in, throw, your rinds, things like that, keep that, and then you can start your own compost pile. And I know people are like, well, you have to do things with the compost pile, but it doesn't have to be too difficult. You can give it a
Yeah,
start.
it can be pretty simple. And if you have a yard with grass clippings, I'm sorry, grass clippings seriously like cover all sins when it comes to the compost. You just that's the easiest thing. You just put the grass in there and you're like, okay, it's fine. It'll figure its stuff out. That's my hot tip there. But no, one of my biggest sustainability things is like, what do I do with my waste? What do I do with my trash? And not in like an obsessive like way. Like I used to be like, I'm going to live somewhere where I have composting toilets and gray water that feeds my garden and everything like perfect, right? Well, I'm doing a little bit, right? I'm doing what's going in my trash. Does it need to go in my trash bag? Does it have to go in that bag? If it's plastic, yeah, it has to go in that bag because we don't need that everywhere else. But if it's something that can be composted, like a lot of times the argument against compost is like, well, I never really get enough to like feed my garden. I'm like, that's fine. You're keeping it out of the trash. You're giving that piece of life a chance to have more life. That's why I do that.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect. People think like, well, I could never do, keep up with these things. But with something like that, it can be as simple as not putting it in the trash and giving it to the earth. Like have a hole, dump it in the hole, Like you said, put some grass clippings on it, like Jan said. And I think that comes to like just having a mindset of what can I reuse? Can I reuse this for something else? Can I repurpose it? So I loved that you talked about like I didn't even go out and buy like the nice mason jars or the ball jars. I just used spaghetti jars because guess what? Everybody has jars. That's what we use for our cups. After we use them, we have jars and we just drink out of our jars. Or a jar can also be your containers for leftover food if you need those instead of going out and buying like plastic Ziploc bags. Or, I mean, I still have those every once in a while because sometimes a bag is better. But, like, you can keep your leftovers in those instead of buying all those Ziploc containers or things like that. The Tupperware that's plastic. It's better for you not to put it in the plastic. Just put it in your old spaghetti jar. It works just as well. You can use that. What are some other things you reuse, Jan?
I used to make kombucha myself, right? And I was, don't do this because this is how you explode things. But I was using like spaghetti jars to hold my kombucha. But kombucha has its own natural carbonation, so it will pressurize glass and it will explode. So don't do it. I did have one time I put it in an old wine bottle and I recorked the wine bottle, and then at some point in the middle of the night the cork shot off and just all over. It was like, what is going on? So don't do that. But what I did do find is that like at Trader Joe's, if I get the specialty ginger beer, it has that resealable lid that you do use for kombucha. And so when I went on this glass hunt, I was like, there is quality glass everywhere and everybody's just throwing it away, and I can just use that. And I like the stuff that the product that came in it in the first place, and I get this cool jar. So like, oh man, I'm winning, right? Double double. Keeping an eye out for those things, because it took me a minute. It took that mindset of like, here's the recycling, and transformed it into I'm a treasure hunter, and this is very exciting. That I was like, the world opened up.
Totally. Well, and you can get some of the best stuff like just at a thrift store. Like you can find the best
Mm,
glass things you can reuse. And giving your stuff to a thrift store can be one way that I think everybody uses to be more sustainable, but it helps us to be more sustainable to give things to a thrift store instead, and to look there first before going to buy new stuff is another small thing you could do. One thing that you can do if you want to save energy, which is one that we don't think of often, but I just learned, is instead of having a crock pot plugged in all the time or plugging in your Instapot, you can take any hot pot that you want to keep cooking, and you can get just a regular cardboard box, get some towels or some old newspaper, and put the pot in that box of towels and newspaper, and it'll keep that
mm.
pot simmering for a long time afterwards. And so then, which is actually really nice and more convenient sometimes, because then you can just go put it somewhere else instead of having it on your counter, and you can clear counter space if you're like making a big meal. If it's really hot like that, it'll stay and it'll simmer and it'll work exactly like a slow cooker would
That's
for you.
cool. I didn't
Yeah.
know that one. That's a good
Yeah.
one.
And if you don't have a slow cooker, that's a good one for you, because we don't always have to go buy a new product. We think that we always need a new product, but we buy all these myriad of products when like there are a couple things that'll replace tons of products, and there's stuff we already have. So one of the things I wanted to say was baking soda and vinegar.
Yeah. Yep.
They can replace almost everything. Like there was a study that came out where they tested vinegar against like the best antiseptics, and vinegar performs just as well. It gets rid of
Wow.
99% of the bacteria. It does a great job. So all you got to do is mix that vinegar with some water, and that's what people used to use for everything. Like you can use it to clean your counters. You can also use it to unclog your sink or your disposal to get rid of grease that's gone down your pipes. You can use it to soften your clothing, so you can put it in with your clothes as a clothing softener instead of using that. You can use it and drink it before meals. Of course, apple cider vinegar, it's all the rage to get those enzymes, but just use some vinegar before you eat meals. It'll help you digest stuff better. You can soak things in it that are rusty, or like if you want to clean things, like it's an incredible cleaner. Baking soda is the same way. You can use, if you do end up having like indigestion, you can use baking soda for that. You can use baking soda for a cleaner. You can also put that in your laundry as well. Like those two things can replace pretty much most of the cleaners in your house. So, great way to be sustainable.
Absolutely. And we're talking about multi-purpose, multi-use things. That is one that you can even eat, which is not a common thing, right? It's so interesting that you can baking soda and vinegar will do so many things for you.
But instead, we have like a million products, right? Like you can even use vinegar to rinse out your hair if you need to. Like if you don't have shampoo, use a little bit of vinegar. It will clean things out for you. Baking soda can help you with burns. It can help you with tons of things. And that's another thing that is really easy to reuse as well as honey. The
Yeah.
USDA used to encourage people to use honey on cuts and burns and things like that. And then all of a sudden, after we got all these more advanced medical techniques, they started telling people, oh no, that's bad for you. Don't do it. But now there's medical grade honey. They are using it in the doctor's office because honey was useful all along. And as far as cough syrups and things like that go, honey works perfectly as a great cough syrup.
Oh,
Just some
yeah.
honey and some lemon, put that in, it will help you, and it outperforms most cough syrups on the market. Just a little bit of honey. So, another great thing that's
I always used to make
useful.
a little syrup of honey and turmeric and a little bit of pepper and make my kids eat it. And the turmeric isn't as flavorful in that situation, so it's not like off putting, but it helps a lot. Like even my son now will just mix up his, and he's 14, he'll mix up a little bit of honey and turmeric when he's got a sore throat.
You can also add garlic if you want, honey garlic. You can put the garlic straight in the honey
Yeah.
and have that. That's a really great one. And you can use it for a myriad of sicknesses, illnesses. Super easy. It can replace tons of other of this advanced stuff, or even tinctures. Like I'm a tincture queen and I will buy so many tinctures, but there are some basics that will cover most everything. And that is one of them.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Honey is a versatile one. Coconut oil is another versatile one. Coconut oil can be drying on the skin sometimes, but I will use coconut oil for like chapstick and stuff like that. And then interestingly, I find that when I mix like coconut oil and baking soda, I can get the adhesive off. Like, the when you remove a sticker from something and it still has the adhesive, I can get that off really easy with a little bit of coconut oil
That's
and baking
perfect.
soda.
That's so great. That's awesome. Yeah, we kind of wanted to touch on foraging and like things in your backyard. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so whenever there's a natural disaster, there's always this thing, there's a secondary effect of people are hungry because, like we said before, grocery stores are only going to have 3 days worth of food. They're not going to have continuous trucking in, and the food in there is going to go bad because the power went out, right? Those kinds of things happen. And there are times where I've seen commentary on the news story afterwards, and you've got this conversation with this person like, yeah, we're starving. We've got a lot going on. Oh my goodness, it's really upsetting. And in the background is a forest where you can visibly see plants that contain food. And it's not the person's fault that they're hungry because they were not taught this. And there's a specific reason why they were not taught this. We don't know how to forage well because we were specifically deterred from foraging. There are a lot of laws against foraging, especially foraging of national parks. This is specifically, I mean, this is where I'm going to get on my conspiracy theory soapbox, but it really has to do with capitalism. This was specifically to prevent indigenous people from being alive, first of all. Also, escaped slaves from being okay. There's a lot of laws where you can't forage just because racism, mostly. Step one, that's the problem. But also because even like white poor people, they didn't want them to be okay either. So it's a really, really big class issue of anti foraging laws. I think it's changing because there has been like a huge rise in foraging, but it's a mentality we have to really really understand and break proactively on a grand scale, to the point where people didn't realize that they could eat the apples and the lemons on the trees on their own yard because they didn't come from the grocery store. It looks the same. Why do you think you can't eat it? Because it hasn't been sanitized or processed? Well, now we have a different conversation, first of all. And when you actually forage locally and do it well, you're going to improve the plant life population and you're going to improve your own body because there's no distance for the nutrients to drive to get to you. There's going to be more nutrient density where you live than where you don't live, because you can't see that farm. When they farm things, the nutrient density decreases over time. If you're foraging in a forest or in your own backyard, you are likely to have so much more nutrient density in that thing that you're consuming. So it's a powerful way to be able to remove yourself from that need. And in big large scale disasters, like I mentioned before, sometimes we need to be able to eat without going to the grocery store. How are we going to do that?
We just have to learn, we have to learn our plants. That's why it's a skill. It requires a little bit of time and a little skill, but there are a few things that you will readily recognize. And I did want to touch on the story that Jaye Anne was telling is totally true, that there are people who believe that apples growing in their backyard on a tree in their backyard, that they cannot eat them because they are not from the grocery store. Like, that is a real thing that has happened to us. Now, even if it seems ridiculous to some of us, there are really people who live that way. And so we've got to kind of break that cycle. And we can do that by just looking around what is in our communities, what's there that we could have. The easiest one for people to recognize that they may not know that they recognize is going to be dandelion greens. Super easy to recognize. Besides fruits
Mhm.
and vegetables that we already know, if you see an apple tree, you're going to recognize the apple tree. Dandelion greens grow everywhere. They're ubiquitous. You can get them in your own backyard. They are a free source of food. That's something that people during the Depression era used to eat all the time because it was free. And they are really, really nutrient dense. They're very good for you. And the roots of them are very good for your liver and making tea. So you can go and cut dandelions and you can eat them from your backyard.
And when you rip them by the root because you don't want them in your yard with your fun lawn, yeah, you can eat them. It's a food.
Yeah,
You don't have to just kill them with chemicals.
exactly. That's the thing. The one thing to watch out for is, do you spray pesticides? Because if you
Yeah,
do, just being watchful, you're going to get those pesticides,
especially herbicides too.
especially herbicides. And, of course, wash them when you use them
Yes.
as well. So
With
be
dandelions
mindful.
too, you got to kind of cook them 3 times to get some of that bitterness out of them. Or they end up,
Yes.
you take a bite and you're like, oh, what did I get into? This is not a spinach.
They're better cooked. Oh, and that goes along with like our using the soup bones and the grease thing, right? Like using those delicious fats that we've saved in our jar in this is going to cut down the bitterness. Cooking them in the bacon fat is going to really make it a lot easier to eat those things. So that's one way to combine a couple of the things that we've talked about. Other things to look at, we talked about this last time, but it's called parslane. Please look it up.
Purslane is so tasty.
It's
It
delicious.
is like tart and it is not gross tasting, but it looks like some kind of Dr. Seuss plant. It's so fun. It's so fun.
It's like a little succulent. It looks like tiny little succulents that like come out of the ground. It grows everywhere. Again,
Yep.
ubiquitous all over the United States, all over the world, basically. You can look it up, use like a little plant identifier app if you want to, but you can literally eat that out of your backyard if you need to. Parslane's there. It's huge, omega 3 rich and heavy, tons of nutrients in those bad boys. Parsleying
Yeah.
is a great thing to have in your backyard. Other
Wild
things?
plants in general usually tend to have higher nutrients in them because that is how they survive. Right? They don't have a farmer looking after them going, "Okay, you okay? Are you okay?" They don't you need more nutrients to be able to survive like that. So that's why they just have natural nutrient density. Another one that is common is lamb's quarters. I always pull it out of my garden because it's a weed. But the leaves actually have a similar nutrient profile to spinach. And again, it's another one you want to cook because lamb's quarters can be high in oxalates. So that's the one that people are like, oh, I have kidney issues. Okay, that's not one for you. But spinach is also high in oxalates. So that's like another thing to be mindful of. If your doctor told you not to eat spinach, don't eat the lamb's quarters either. But I will put it in like a smoothie or whatever, and it's just like spinach. It's milder flavor too.
Those are great examples. Of course, there's going to be a myriad of mushrooms. Mushrooms can be scarier for people
Yeah.
to harvest because they can look alike, and there are ones that are more poisonous. So, being really cautious, that's something that you'll have to get someone who knows what they're doing a little bit more to teach you what are the mushrooms in your area, which ones are good, which ones are not. Always using an identifier app, but they are food that is out there for us if we know how to choose and pick the right ones for us. Any other ones you want to mention as far as harvesting? Oh, pine. I was going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, pine. Pine's a fun one because you get those pine needles, you can make like a soda out of them.
Yes, and they're super, super high in vitamin C. So they're really great if you've got a cold or something like that. Pine, and most people can readily identify pine. That one is easy to identify. Even like rose hips, those are usually easily identifiable. I mean, if you've bought roses from the store, depending on the store, it's not going to be what you maybe want. But if you've got some good hardy ones, you can. Those are really high in vitamin C also. And easier to identify. Anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, a lot. The tips of when in the spring, if you are looking for protein, the tips of the pine, I think it's pine branches, have actually a lot of protein in them. And then I like wild grape. Wild grapes, like the tendrils in the spring, also very tart, and you can just eat those. They're very good. And juniper in the fall. You get a lot of juniper. The berries, they are just so fragrant, and they add a lot to meat dishes, especially. But you can make it in a tea or do a simmer pot. Wild sustainability in your cup.
I love that. I love those. I There was another one I was thinking about that we often overlook. Wild onion. Wild onion and wild garlic.
Mm,
They rapidly lots of places. If you've looked at the green part of garlic or the green part of an onion, it looks like a green onion because it
yep.
is a green onion.
Yep.
And you can smell it and it'll smell like onion. And those I have used and eaten, and they grow everywhere. A lot of people try to get rid of them because they become invasive. But there's that, and sometimes wild mint will grow in certain places as well. So just knowing that, or even like lavenders, these are going to be more things people plant, but you will find those wild grasses like the wild garlic or wild onion. You'll find those, and sometimes you'll find sour grass. Have you ever had sour grass before?
Mm-mm.
Well, it tastes exactly what it sounds like. It tastes like sour grass, but it's all edible, and they have great properties for you as well.
Also, wood sorrel, which looks like clovers, but it's not. It's not a clover, but it's the tiny little clovers that have these little seed pods. Seed pods are delightful. They're tart and tasty.
If you don't know what any of these plants look like, please look them up. But it's just
Yes.
one tiny class away. Like there's often going to be someone in your area. We've talked about this before, who is a master gardener, who does do these things, or people online. It's pretty easy to find free resources to help you identify plants that you could harvest yourself, especially if you're in an emergency situation, like Jan was talking about. And it's kind of cool because if you've ever watched Alone, one of the
Yeah.
contestants, Nicole, she is super cool. she talked about how she was able to find over 122, I think, edible plants out where she was alone in the middle of nowhere and survived off of those for a long time, which is really cool, even though she didn't have protein. I mean, she was like, man, I need to get some protein. I need to like get a fish or something like that, but it will help you a ton. The plants are there to help support you.
Absolutely. But did you know there is a native fruit to Virginia and Galatia that no one talks about, and it is tastes like a banana and a kiwi at the same time. It is a
Ooh,
tropical flavor fruit, and no one knows about. It's called pawpaw, and it's native.
papa. Ooh, I didn't know that was native to that area. Wow. Find the pawpaw, people. It's delicious.
It's so good. In August, that's when they fruit. In August, go for a little walk off the beaten path. I went to like a really like swanky, fancy area where I live, and I just walked off the path, and they look like these long Easter eggs. They're green, and they're just all over the forest floor. And I was like, oh, the riches! You have no idea, because nobody knows what these things are. They're so good. They have these huge flat seeds, which is also interesting in the middle. So the fruits in between them. Anyways, that's my little tidbit there.
And this is why we said that this was going to be a part 2 of our herbalism.
Yeah, it
One,
ended up being, yeah.
we're like all the plants, everyone go learn the plants and eat them. But that is so cool. And I'm sure in lots of other areas of the country, you could find lots of indigenous native things that are where you are that you can eat. But hopefully that gives you kind of a taste for like, okay, there is food out there. There is a way to do some of these things. We've talked about some of the ways that hopefully are simple for people to be sustainable. Is there anything else we want to touch on in this category?
No, I think it's probably a good time to point people to some resources, because this is not something you can just learn in an hour and just do it and be good at it. It takes practice, it takes screwing up, it takes all kinds of, learning and going, oh, this is what other people are doing and things like that. So, what are some books that have helped you understand any of this, or what are some resources you would like to share?
Well, you and I both love Nourishing Traditions. That book is amazing for helping people, and we had Holistic Hilda on to talk about it. The Weston A. Price Foundation talks a lot about the sustainability and how to do things in a more sustainable way, ways you can make your own stuff. We didn't even talk about like making your own, laundry detergent or
Yeah.
dish soap. But all those things, they are simpler than you think. I started making my own deodorant before I found like a good deodorant that I like. And I did make it with baking soda. I know that can irritate some people's skin, but it does work. But they can be really simple. They're usually like 3 ingredients to make some of these things. And like we said, it doesn't have to take you forever. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, this would take me a long time, or like I can't fit this into my lifestyle. You don't have to do all these things. Just fit what you can into your lifestyle of what we said. Like everyone can save their glass jars. Everyone uses glass jars. Everyone can save and reuse a glass jar regardless of how busy you are. So just take what works for you. But the Weston A. Price Foundation, and particularly the book Nourishing Traditions, has a lot of information about how to do this. So that's one good resource.
Well, I really liked in the Nourishing Traditions book, it has on the margins, it has all these different stories of people. And that helped me like really make sense of how any of this could fit into my life. Because it's like, here's a recipe on how to make your own cheese. And it's like, okay, I can also go buy cheese at the store, but it's like in the margins, it just tells stories of people and what they did with the whey and how they consumed the whey and how that helped their digestive enzymes, and how that people who consumed whey live longer because they had more, their pancreas didn't have to work that hard really. And I was like, oh, this is why and how I can fit this into my life. So like reading those stories in the margins is not nothing. Like that's a big part of why that book is even good.
Yeah, and one of the myths that we probably should dispel, and we didn't touch on this in the how did we get here, but this is a small part of how we got here, which is, something, one of those nourishing traditions, which is really cool, is people cooking their liver in lard, cooking their liver in these specific fats, and how that actually now we know that that unlocks the nutrients of the
Yeah.
lard, the liver even more. And so, like I said about saving your fat in a jar and reusing it, some people might think, animal fats are bad for me. They're going to hurt me. And that's one of the biggest things that happened in the 1950s is they started to produce Crisco. And Crisco was a vegetable oil and told people to use Crisco instead of saving their fat and reusing their fat. They started telling people, don't use animal fats. Animal fats are bad for you. And of course, you should do everything in moderation. However, animal fats are much better for you, in my opinion, than even vegetable oil is going to be for you, because vegetable oil, it's more about the chemical processes that we have to go through to get vegetable oil than the natural fat that we're going to use in things like butter or even lard. And so that's just one trick or tip, is that, things we cook together, saving that is not going to hurt you. You can replace butter with those fats and not have to worry too much about it.
Right. And the mild aside here is a lot of the studies that were, quote, done on saturated fat and heart disease was actually done on the replacements and not on the original thing, which is kind of dumb. Yeah, that's kind of where that myth sort of came from. Not to say all 100% of vegetable oils are bad. It's these manipulated vegetable oils that are particularly bad. And Crisco is hydrogenated, which means they add enough hydrogens to the specific places, like little puzzle pieces, to make it a saturated fat. And so it's like, oh, saturated fat is bad for you. Well, Crisco is bad for you. Or that hydrogenation process is really bad for you.
Yes, yes. People get really afraid of fat because of that. And like Jaye Anne said, those studies, when you look closer, you can see how they were manipulated. But of course, again, everything in moderation. We want to not have too much of one thing, whether that's fat, carbs, etc. But if you would like to learn more tips and tricks, there's a YouTube channel called Forgotten American Survival, and it has tons of tricks and tips that we had during the depression era, before the depression era, that families used to do, and they teach you how to do these. It's free, it's on YouTube, it's easy, and I will link it in the show notes for people to find. But that's just one source. I mean, there's a million homesteading YouTube channels that
Yeah.
you can find and people who do this. This was just one that is focused on tricks and tips for people, which are easier for people to understand, I think, and grasp.
I think that one thing that we do need to say out loud is the tradwife trope is like a false narrative because the perfectly like done up lady who's hand making cereal with like tiny balls of dough that she I don't understand this. Okay, this is ridiculous. This is not actually we're doing sustainability and I am putting on a show of things that I think you should care about, but I'm going to tell you right now the reason she can even have this channel like this is because her husband makes a bunch of money, and that's why she's a trad wife, not because she's actually doing sustainable living. So let's put the trope on the shelf and just not deal with that and come to like your reality of authenticity and call that what it is. Because when we start getting obsessed with labels and what we think about labels are, then we start to step into the conflict we're having with the label in the am I putting on a mask thing. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what can you do in your real life that's like actually sustainable and will bring you some version of joy and a little bit of peace of mind. Like I'm also contributing to population stability. I'm also contributing to overall sustainability. I'm also contributing to making the world a better place while I'm doing this very authentic thing.
Yes, and like don't feel like you have to put on those labels. And even if you are someone, let's say, who stays at home and primarily takes care of children and doesn't have like a job or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a trad wife, or like we're telling you that you need.
Yeah, that's not the same thing.
Yes, it's not the same thing. And you don't have to do all of the things that we've said, like Jaye Anne said, it's about taking what you can do and what works for you. Because something Jaye Anne and I have talked about, which we probably will do more on the show as kind of its own episode, is um, just because you're a trad wife doesn't mean you're feminine. It doesn't mean that you're in your feminine or doing things in a feminine way. And we don't want people to feel like because we're giving you, these ideas and these tips and these tricks or whatever, that you have to all of a sudden go into masculine mode and do and get caught up in that loop and that cycle, and that it's not valuable unless you do that. No, no, no. That's not what this is about at all. This is just about finding a few things that work authentically for you.
And slowing down is about coming into presence. That's it. It's not about what you're wearing. It's not about how authentic you appear to be to whatever authenticity you think is marketable. It's about coming into your feminine, is actually about slowing down and making conscious decisions on what it is you're trying to do and why. And that's it.
Yeah, and creating, I think the feminine works very well when she has some stability, when things are reasonable, when she's not in burnout, right?
Yeah.
Like when you can be open to receiving. Let's not forget that the feminine is about receiving. And when we slow down and we're in our presence and in a present state, then we can actually receive. We can receive what's coming to us. We can receive the stillness. We can receive the thought. We can receive the beauty. It's not always about give everything. And sometimes if we get too far into some of these things, like, oh, I have to make everything now, I have to make everything from scratch now,
Yeah.
and I have to do this and I have to wear this and all those kinds of things, then we're in the mode of give. We're not receiving anymore. We're not getting the thing. And so just making this more of a practice of I want to be in presence. I want to do a few things that make my life actually easier, not harder, and simplify my life so I can receive more. And when we're in that state, when we're in the relaxed state and we're able to receive, then we can make beautiful things. Then the creativity comes. Then we give beautiful things back, and but it's not from a place of burnout or having to or trying to keep up with what we see online. It's from that beautiful slowing down, feeling present, feeling relaxed, and
Yes.
receiving.
Yes. Beautiful. I love this. I love this. So true. Um, my resource that I think everybody should watch, follow, take, if you want to know about foraging, I follow Black Forager on Instagram. She is fantastic and she's fun and she does a lot of things with fun fairy sparkles, but also like super informative. And she'll tell you which types of plants are invasive, and she does like little quizzes of like, do you know which one is poisonous and which one is the thing to eat? So I learned a lot there, and she's actually where I learned about how like I didn't even know that people, it was a real thing that people like didn't think they could eat the apples from the yard, but she was the one who like walked through that whole process, and I was like, whoa, that makes so much sense. That's terrible, but it makes sense why we got here, so let's fix that. Please. But yeah, she's really good at all of that, making it very easy, and she does it for free because it's on Instagram.
That's great. And so many of these resources are free. Like I said, there are so many
Yeah.
channels, there are so many Instagrams. I'm sure you can find wonderful things, but those are just a few resources that have helped both me and Jaye Anne and just getting more in the mindset. I think if you consume a little bit more of this content, then you'll think of things yourself. You'll think of ways to be sustainable all on your own just by thinking of how to reuse something that usually you'd throw away. And it can be as simple as that.
100%. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. And have a great week, and we'll see you next time.